Hey everyone, welcome to session 104 of the Behavioral Observations podcast. Not too long ago, my friends at ABA Inside Track, Rob, Diana, and Jackie, invited me back for another year in review episode. I've enjoyed getting to know these guys over the last few years, and doing an episode like this seems like it's a fun tradition in the making. So I hope you enjoy this second round of the year in review episode. So what did we talk about? Well, it seems like 2019 was the year of the ABA podcast. So many shows were launched that it's hard to keep track of them all. In addition to Behavioral Observations, I've listed all the currently published ABA shows in today's show notes. But I'm going to apologize in advance to my podcasting brethren because it is quite possible that I've overlooked some because, again, so many have been launched in this year. But it's just great to see the medium flourish like it is, and it's nice to know that there is an audience for all this super nerdy content. So what else did we talk about? Well, we also talked about some milestones for both of the podcasts. Specifically, we both crossed the 100 episode mark, and we both got over 1 million downloads for our respective shows. So it just, again, it's very humbling to know that there are people who are taking time out of their day to download and listen to the content that we put out. It's just amazing. Rob, Jackie, Diana, and I also discussed the passing of prominent leaders in our field, including Drs. Barbara Edsel, Janet Ellis, and Murray Sidman. We then rounded out the show by covering some trends in ABA practice that we observed in 2019, and then gave a preview of what's coming up for both shows in 2020. And on this note, I want to extend a personal thanks to all of you who tuned into the podcast in 2019. To all of you, I wish you a safe and happy holiday, and I look forward to providing informative behavior analytic content for you in 2020 and beyond. Session 104 is brought to you by the following: HRIC Recruiting. If you're looking for your dream job, work directly with agency owner Barb Voss and let her 30 years of recruiting experience work for you. Whether you're relocating or just wondering what else is available in your area, go to hricolorado.com and schedule a confidential chat right away. We're also brought to you by the Act for High Functioning Autism workshop that's being held in Santa Ana, California on February 7th, 8th, and 9th in 2020. Check out connections-behavior.com/events to learn more. And if you do decide to attend, use the promo code podcast25 to save on registration. Lastly, we are brought to you by Go Lotus. Go Lotus is an easy-to-use, intuitive practice management platform. From scheduling to notes to data collection and more, they do it all. And with no contracts or obligations. So to find out more about what they have to offer, go to golotus.com/register. And if you do sign up, use the coupon code MATT2019 and you'll get 25% off your first 3 months. Okay, I think that's it for opening announcements. So without any further delay, please enjoy this 2019 year-in review chat with my good friends at ABA Inside Track.
Welcome to the Behavioral Observations podcast, stimulating talk for today's behavior analysts. Now here's your host, Matt Sikoria.
Season's greetings to everyone and Happy New Year! It's here. We're here. We're here, all your friends from your favorite, we assume your favorite behavior analytic podcast, not just ABA Inside Track, but also Behavioral Observations. I'm one of your hosts for this fun-filled New Year shindig, Robert Perry Cruz, and I'm joined by a number of other folks. Who do we have here?
Hello, it's Diana. Can anyone tell that Rob's been watching Futurama lately?
Good news, everyone!
And I'm Jackie.
And who do we have joining us from afar? Sorry.
You stomped on my intro there. Hey, everyone, it's Matt Sikoria from the Behavioral Observations podcast. Thanks for inviting me yet again for round number 2 of our year in review special.
Our year in review special. I know, 2 years in a row. 2 years of reviewing is what we're doing.
Hey, you know what, Rob?
Yes. What?
If we do it next year, it'll be a trend.
Yeah. There you go. This is the fun we're going to have on this episode.
Oh,
I can
man.
already
Hold on,
tell.
Beaker.
Well, for those of you who are like, I'm going to click on, I'm not sure where this is going to go in your feed, Matt. I mean, this will come out in our normal feed, but it's usually like got the bonus moniker for like the special episodes we do. So if someone clicked on this as their first time listening to us, we're going to do things a little more fun, a little more laid back. You know, it's cold and wintry. You know, everyone's been celebrating various holidays, and usually we talk about one given topic. But this year we're going to talk about the big topic, which is the entirety of the field of applied behavior analysis, which is pretty big.
No pressure.
Pretty big topic.
Yeah, we should wrap it up in about 30 minutes, I think.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's
Not much to say. It's really,
only 365 days to cover.
well, yeah.
Time to reflect.
It's time to reflect. It's a good time to reflect. And so we enjoyed doing this last year with Matt. And so we're doing it again this year to see what are some of the trends and what's coming up in the new year. So I guess some of the things we want to start with are just kind of some general discussions about what were some of the big moments for folks in the year 2019, which I think when this is coming out is just about to end. And it's going to be 2020. Or you may be listening to this and it is 2020. Or hell, it's 2021. Who knows?
Maybe it's 2017 and you've gone back in time.
Oh.
JK, everyone.
Matt, did you know Jackie's never seen the film Back to the Future?
I'm sorry, I didn't know that was possible.
I know.
I know.
I'm going to come over to your house and we'll
Are
watch
you
it
guys
together.
calling social services right now on her?
I want a trend in 2020 to be Jackie sees the Back to the Future films.
Okay.
That's what I would like.
I'll do it. I'll do it, guys.
All right, so that's the biggest moment in 2019. Jackie promised to see Back to the Future. But let's get into some real big moments in behavior analysis. I mean, I think the first one that we have kind of on our list is there was a time in the not too distant past where there were really the only R2 podcasts that talked about behavior analysis. I think there have been a few sort of like splinter, special episode kind of things. I know like Amanda Kelly had some like mini-sodes that she did for a while.
She still does.
Does she still do those sometimes?
Yeah, that was way back.
That was way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was way back.
Way back in the day.
Yeah, I had looked into this for a talk I did about a month ago, and there were two other podcasts. The Rick Cabina had the Precision Teaching podcast, and Matt Normand, under the auspices of Java, did a Java podcast, and both of those, particularly the Java one, was short-lived. Rick published quite a few episodes, but ended up hanging up the microphone because it would, as did Matt, because they, and I talked to them both about it. They just said it was too time-consuming, and as you guys know, there's a lot that goes into this. And although it's getting easier and easier to publish a podcast these days, and so I think the barrier to entry is coming way, way down. But yeah, those were the two ones. That plus those. I think Amanda had some like short kind of informational episodes and things like that. And what's cool is that both Amanda and Rick have returned to podcasting in a big way. So, and then as you were alluding to, Rob, amongst many, many others.
No, all of a sudden, I feel like we met somebody at Thompson Center, the Behavior Chef, the podcast. They were doing a podcast, and then
our friends Zach and Caleb have the Functional Relations podcast, the Why We Do What We Do podcast, Behavior Bitches podcast.
Yep.
The ABA
I think
Lab.
if we attempt to list them all, we're gonna upset someone by forgetting to mention.
I know.
Out on accident.
I think I had a slide for this at the presentation that I did, and I think there were upwards of like 15 or 20 podcasts when you really sit down and think about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Behavior analysis or just sort of general behavior psychology.
Or in all podcasts.
There's more than
probably
20
15 or
in
20.
podcasting.
Are you sure?
There's more than 20 in total, yes.
In behavior analysis?
No.
Yeah.
No. Just in all podcasts. Everyone's got a podcast.
No. I was talking about in behavior analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Diana made it
That is still
confusing.
surprising that there are that many. But that's great.
Yes. Indeed.
The people
That's a
have
lot.
choice.
So I think one of the things I think is cool about this is that there seems to be a behavior analytic podcast for different perhaps preferences or what have you. And I know some, so if someone wants to go, deep dive into the research articles and things like that, your ABA Inside Track is your go-to source for that, and then you've got some others like you mentioned, the Behavior Chef, what Clint does
focuses on health and wellness and things along those lines. And, so I think it's cool that there's like, you think of behavior analysis as super niche-y in the first place. And there's all these niches within niches, in our field that it's really cool that, and there seems to be an audience for all these. And the fact that, it's not like network television where if you're, watching a show at 9 p.m., it's an opportunity cost for watching, some other show that's scheduled at the same time,
right,
because all these things can be accessed asynchronously. It's just neat.
Yeah, I
while you're using the bathroom, while you're taking a shower, while you're doing the dishes, while you're driving.
Yeah.
So many opportunities to listen to podcasts.
I actually have a podcast for like activities, right? So when I'm walking my dog, I listen to one behavior analytic podcast. When I'm driving in the car, I'll listen to another behavior analytic podcast. So I have them in like activities that I do, because I hate it when I go to listen and it's like, you're all caught up. And I'm like, no!
There's always something. I think one of the nice things too is, as much as our field is getting older, it is still a young field. And the podcasts coming out have a lot of what I liked about podcasts when I first started listening to them, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, which was this sort of sense of like, you got the same sense with like basic cable first came on the air in the 80s of like, wow, anything could happen. It's like people just decided to make a show and here you go. Cause I know one of the trends I see with some of like the million subscriber podcasts is everything's being, commercial. And there's a sort of a crunch of, networks getting up podcasts and then celebrities getting podcasts. And it sort of takes the fun out of the sort of do it yourself ethos of podcasting. So I do like that our field's kind of embracing it at that, like, hey, we're making a show and it's going to be about this specific,
right,
niche.
And fun. The audio is not going to be perfect, and there's going to be, the music's not going to be as balanced. It's like when you see those, I personally don't prefer the hyper produced. Oh yeah. What's it? Gimlet type of Gimlet Media type of shit. Like the
I'm
super.
Totally with you, Matt.
It's like, and what also I'm secretly jealous of is that those people have like armies of writers and engineers and directors and things like that. And it's like, wow, man, if I had all those resources
at my like 15 different people that helped produce that one episode.
And we're like, wow, well, thank you everyone at this table.
I'm still amazed. Right. It's like it published somewhere. You can download the thing I made. Hooray! It's still impressive.
But the thing is, and that maybe this is a transition into some of the milestones that both of our podcasts have made here. But I think that the neat thing is that I forget who was talking to about this, but if you go to what do you think? If you go to ABAI or APBA and you go to the big talk, whether it's the presidential address or something like that, how many people in that ballroom do you think are there? Just
I'm always very bad at that type of estimation. Yes, that seems. Yeah.
I don't know.
5 to 8.
Maybe. I would say maybe like. Yeah, probably like we're talking low 4 figures as the max, right?
Yeah.
And to think that an episode, within a month's time, can be downloaded 10,000 times or more.
Crazy, I know.
Mm-hmm. I think this is more of a section. I want to talk about this, not to kind of, high five each other and stuff like that. It's not to toot our. I mean, we'll do a little a little virtual high five here, but it's just, I think, another way in which this medium can be an effective tool to communicate with other practitioners.
Right.
So we can reach a lot of people very, very efficiently, and just the medium of podcasting is tailor made for the types of things that we are as BCBAs are interested in, or at least that's what I've gathered over the couple of years of doing this.
Yeah. It's super creepy also when you're like walking down the street and then someone walks by you and they're like, oh my God, you're from ABA Inside Track. And I'm like, yes, hi. And it's like in the middle of the woods.
No one ever recognizes me.
Well, They do.
Just Jackie.
You're just not talking. I'm usually just always talking.
You're too scary to talk to, Diana. People, they don't want to come up to you. They don't know what you say.
I am very scary looking.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, when I first met you, that's what happened. It's like, I recognize your voice. I'm like, you're Jackie from ABA Inside Track.
And I was like, you're Matt. Hi. I remember actually that. We were in like a lobby and my kid was like, I was like running to my child.
That's right.
I looked real
you
bad.
Had like the baby front pack on. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I was like, hi, this is my child.
There she goes.
I have to go feed her.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just funny too, like to know that people are listening to us.
I know. Well,
but I also think it does speak to like the current nature of our field, right? That it is a really young field populated by a lot of young professionals who are still interested and eager to learn more about the field that they chose for their career, which is really exciting, and a lot of them do drive around and have time during their day where they would like to continue to fill it with more information about what they want to learn about. And I feel like we're in a unique and special position to be able to provide that to them and kind of serve as their buddies in the car or wherever it is that they're going.
Right.
And it makes me excited about the future of our field, that people seek out more to learn about when they don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So they have the opportunity to, like, maybe not sit down and read a research article, but talk about it with us through that process, right? Or maybe they don't have the opportunity to go to a big conference and see someone like Pat Fryman give a talk, but they can do that through your podcast, Matt. Like, that's so special, and I think we are all really lucky to be in these positions.
Are you ready to make the leap from pen and paper into the digital world? Do you spend hours taking notes, tracking data, figuring out schedules, and even worse, dealing with insurance billing? Or are you frustrated by your current system? Well, I recommend you check out Go Lotus. Go Lotus was created by a product development expert who spent years building systems for Apple and Microsoft before her child was diagnosed with autism and everything changed. She created Go Lotus with one mission in mind: to create a platform that could help therapists better treat their kiddos by providing a tool that allows them to focus on the actual work, not the paperwork. Go Lotus is an intuitive, easy to use, and dare I say, beautiful system. It handles every aspect of practice management, from data tracking and automatic SOAP notes to scheduling and billing. They even offer a white glove in-house billing service if you want billing fully managed outside your clinic. It's so simple your entire team can be up and running in less than an hour. For more information, go to golotus.com/register for a free demo. And if you do sign up, tell them I sent you, or just use the coupon MATT2019 and you'll get 25% off the first 3 months. They're so confident that you will love their system that they allow you to cancel at any time. There's no risk and no commitment required. So again, if you want more info, head on over to golotus.com/register.
Yeah, well said for sure.
All right. Well, Matt, you mentioned some milestones for this year, so we should probably get that all out of the way. We'll do a round of high fives. I think you mentioned, and I think it's good to bring up. So between us both, I know we're not, I guess, probably the first podcast about behaviors. I know, why we do what we do, I think, hit this milestone a little bit back, but we both of our shows reached the 100th episode mark and beyond at this point. So that I know for us was a shocking achievement that we had continued doing this for that long a time. I don't know.
I know, it's crazy.
Do you have a similar feeling of like, what have I been doing with my life that I did 100 of these things?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just remember recording the first initial episodes. And I don't know if you guys did this or not, but I recorded probably like 6 or 8 episodes well before I even launched the podcast itself, because I really wanted to. I was afraid that if I, published the first episode with very little in the can, if you will, that I would be under this pressure to produce more content. And at the time, these days, it's a lot easier for me to get guests and things like that. And I have more inbound requests to come on the show than me reaching out to people. And of course, when you don't have a podcast going in the first place, it's all reaching out to people to try to get them to come on the show.
Right.
And when I was doing that in the, I guess, spring and summer of 2015, podcasting was not as well known as it is right now. So, so when I was having these initial conversations, I also had to tell people what a podcast was in some respects. It's
we
like
still do that.
It's like a radio show, but it's on the internet, and sort of thing. So it was, and to think that here we are, almost in 2020. It's just amazing. So, and between that and the that and the downloads and things like that, I think at the last count of at least behavioral observations has been downloaded over 1.5 million times.
Big numbers,
which is crazy.
It's crazy,
and
it's exciting.
And I'm sure you guys get the geographic stats with yours, but it's like when you look at the countries in which your podcast has been listened to.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. It's like you see someone like in some far flung place. There's 2 downloads, and it's like, was that like the podcast version of a butt dial?
Right.
Yeah. Or like someone has like an ad bot that's like, oh, it's in the middle of this island. Like, what are they doing? Downloading? They think we have ads or so. I don't know what they're doing. Yeah, it is pretty awesome.
Yeah, but we get emails from people all over the world who are listening.
Yep.
It's really cool.
It's good to know behavior analysis has
Egypt,
spread.
Israel, Brazil,
hopefully we'll continue to do so, because
China.
I know the graphs are always like, and here's everyone in the New England area, and then kind of Florida, California, and then various places in America, and then it kind of not quite as thick a shading, but getting
it maps
better.
on like precisely to where there are schools for behavior analysis.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much precisely. But that's
Agreed.
continuing to spread and grow, and we've definitely had more international listeners of late, so that's exciting stuff too.
Yeah.
I don't know what our
very much
download
so.
numbers are.
When we switched, I have never been good at finding those numbers, and then B,
You should teach us how to do that, Matt.
Well, I found they're easier now, but then when we switched how we put the podcast out, it didn't reset the numbers, but I lost a lot of the old numbers, and they're not. I didn't really save them other than I think I said a number once, so I'm pretty sure it's over 1 million, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it is. Let's say yes, totally, it's over 1 million.
Data.
Yeah,
Sure it
totally. Way over.
It was really close on the ones just since we moved in a year or so. So I would like to think we had at least 10% of the downloads in the past 2 years that we had in 1 year.
That makes sense.
Did you guys change hosting platforms?
Yeah, we were on. I don't even remember what we were on, and then we went to
BeamPod? Is that a thing?
No, I think I just uploaded them to nowhere, and then just had to populate it, which was a big pain in the ass. Everything I've done about podcasting was I did it the most backwards, cheap way possible, and that's how I learned to do it. And then it was well, now to do it in a way that costs only a little bit of money is so easy, but I have to transfer all these files, and it's so I drag my feet on a lot of it. So yeah, because now we're on Libsyn, which has been super duper easy. They were super nice about letting me upload things and everything. But before then, I don't even remember. I think we were just sort of uploading it to the internet and then forcing iTunes to find us. And it was really quite fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, I've been with Libsyn from the get-go, it's. But yeah, like we alluded to earlier, there's all these other things out there right now that are they're free hosting, and you could do everything all within the app and stuff like that. And so I think that's where a lot of the newer AVA podcasts are getting going, because it's just so. The response effort significantly lower, and as is the cost.
Yeah,
things like that. But
it's so fun.
I think it's just like any other technology; it gets easier and cheaper as it becomes more widely available and whatnot. So
yeah.
Right. But Behavioral Observations has some big things going on in you. You published a book.
That's right. Thank you for mentioning that. So Lisa Britton came on the show, I want to say 2 years ago, and talking about supervision. That's pretty much what she does full time. and in particular remote supervision. And she was approached by Elsevier, I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced. But to write a book on supervision, she invited me to help her write it, thankfully. And so that was fun putting that together. It was an interesting writing process that we had. We basically had a Skype call every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 8:00, if I'm not mistaken. And we just basically it was a pretty effective accountability tool, And so we met very briefly. But it was just basically to say, virtually, like, did you do what you said you were going to do? Mm-hmm. Yes or no. And then vice versa, the question got reflected back.
You had to look at each other's eyes, though, so, you couldn't.
Yeah, totally. So there was a lot of fixed interval responding on my part. I'm sure Lisa was way more diligent about it than I was. But, I remember lots of Tuesdays, like, crushing out some chapters. So. We published a book on remote supervision, which was great fun. And so she's got a really awesome process for doing it. And I kind of looked at it as, my role as helping Lisa to kind of share her process. And it was a very, so that came out last spring, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's been cool.
That is really neat.
That's awesome. Congrats.
And remote supervision too. I feel like so many topics are on the in-person supervision, and I know we've had a couple guests on that talked about remote supervision and all the technologies you can use. And in some ways, I feel like remote supervision has gotten a little easier even than having to do the in-person stuff. And I mean, certainly more efficient in some ways. And, the fact that you probably have to capture video, or you have to be looking at what people are sending you rather than have to schedule a time and then hope everything works out,
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think one of the things that we'll probably get to in a bit is just the proliferation of technology in general to, and how these different needs in our field are giving way to various entrepreneurial endeavors. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Another cool thing is that I know you guys have taken the show on the road, and I've had a couple opportunities to do that too. So where were you guys?
Yeah, we've gone to some agencies. We went to TACT, the Autism Community Therapist, and did a live show there. We've done 2 live shows at the Autism. Oh my God.
The Thompson Center
for Autism Conference, both last year and this year. We did some special clips for Babbitt, more formally this year and informally last year. We're going to Tex Aba in April. And we have some, nice. And we have some pending invitations that we have yet to reply to. So it's been interesting.
I know the biggest surprise is that anyone would like to see us do this in person, because it's like, oh, you want to see the version of the show where we don't screw up a bunch, and I edit that out. We cut out all the words. We're like, oh, what's that research? But it's certainly fun. I mean, I think one of the things that is nice about the podcast format is how it's meant to be educational, but there's got to be an entertainment component to anything. Because as easy as it is to say, oh, it'd be so much more straightforward to listen to a show where I listen to one of the, a leader in the field, doing an interview with you, Matt, or talking about research, if they're, talking with us. It's still effort that could be spent doing any number of other things in one's life. So if there's no fun to it, it's still a hard proposition. So I guess that's kind of come out, that these can be entertaining as well as educational. I
find you fun, Matt.
Yeah, I do too. It's humbling, but it's also super reinforcing.
Yeah.
It's humbling in the fact that, yes, people are, want to, bring you out to some location and have you do what you do in front of a crowd of people and stuff like that. And,
right.
This is just something, I'm in my basement right now. It's like I'm a guy who talks into a microphone in his basement, and it's like, yeah, we want that, It's just like, it's kind of fun, So.
Where have you gone?
This year I went to the Tate Behavioral Conference, which was in Springfield, Massachusetts. And that was great fun.
It sounded fun.
Yeah, it was a really good time, and I did an hour-long presentation as well, and then I did an interview with Kim Behrens in the afternoon.
Nice.
So it was the first kind of like, or it's like kind of like the longest talk I've done, and then I got to kind of like regroup and then do the interview. I'm just glad they weren't back to back, but the folks at Tate were awesome, and they were super awesome hosts. It was really a lot of fun. And then just recently, earlier this week, I was down in Worcester, Massachusetts, and was at the offices of FTF Behavioral Consulting, where
fun.
Greg Hanley was gracious enough to invite me down there to hang out with his team. And in the process, so it was a live taping, but he had interviewed me.
I can't wait to listen to that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like, of course, everyone wants to hear Greg Hanley, and he forbade me from turning the questions around on him, quite strictly. His episodes, especially the first 3 ones, are like the most highly downloaded episodes, like by a large factor than any other episodes I have. The first 3 episodes he was on, I think, have been downloaded like 150,000 times just on their own.
He's a fan favorite.
Without question. And I've got some things coming up as well, that are yet to be, I guess, announced. So I got a couple of, like you guys, I got some invites and et cetera that we're sorting out and hope to be announcing very soon. I can't think of, am I forgetting anything with regard to that? No, I think that's there. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can really announce right now, but people will hear it on the show, and I'll be talking about it then. Yeah. So, but again, it's just like when people want to bring you out to someplace, it is just super humbling for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun years, I think, for us all, but let's move into sort of the general field at large, I suppose. And why don't we start with the kind of our in memoriam section? I know when we talked for our 100th episode, we had on Gina Green, and we talked about the history of ABA, and it sort of hits again of how many big leaders in the field have already passed and then are getting to that point where that is going to be a reality. I know.
I hope you're not listening. I'm so sorry.
Well, who? Not who?
Any big people in the field that are like...
I think we all realize that someday it'll happen.
Yeah.
But that sense of kind of the field moving on to like the next generation, and it's...
Well, that's just how time works.
Yeah.
What? Huh? I thought, I saw Back to the Future, so I know how time works, Diana.
Oh, I see.
So
it's not
we
really
had...
about money or fame.
No.
You know that, Rob.
I know that.
It's about the power of love.
All right. So we have a couple folks that passed away this past year.
Mm-hmm. So Murray Sidman is one that's close and near and dear to our heart. Dr. Sidman worked at the New England Center for Children when we were all there, and then worked at Northeastern when we were all in our master's degree or shortly after. And he has been fairly seminal in our field, starting with stimulus equivalence and doing a lot of amazing work. We all went to his memorial, his memorandum at ABAI, which was super sad.
Yeah, but he had just passed away right before ABAI.
Right.
So I would think that in the upcoming year they'll likely do something larger in memoriam for him, but this was just sort of like a smaller gathering. But it was really sweet. People had pictures of him
and
on
his
a
wife.
slideshow, and a lot of really touching and nice tributes to him, and the way that he had inspired all of his students and really pushed the field forward. So he will greatly be missed.
Mm-hmm. And we
it's a good personal connection you guys have with him. The only connection I have is just this reading tactics of scientific research.
Yep.
That was the first single subject design textbook we used alongside of Johnson and Pennypacker at Auburn. And I was just kind of thumbing through it before we hit record here. I was looking at these underlines and highlights that I made back in like 1997, and it was Just some of the way he wrote, some of the ways in which he phrased things were just incredible, and just for that alone is, a contribution. The amazing content of his body of work notwithstanding.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. And then we also wanted to highlight 2 women in behavior analysis who passed away this year. So one was Dr. Barbara Edsel, who had been for many, many years a professor at KU, University of Kansas, and she was really seminal in our field in establishing the role of women in being a prominent researcher. So I know that there was several rounds on Facebook talking about her when she passed away and how many people that she really influenced and that she will be greatly missed. And then Dr. Janet Ellis as well passed away not too long ago this year, and she was a professor at UNT, which is the University of North Texas in Denton, near where I used to live, in fact.
Oh.
Which is why I know that's where it is. And she worked with Dr. Sigrid Glenn and others, and I know that, again, she was sort of an earlier generation of women in the field, and there aren't too many of them. So we wanted to highlight both of those women as well, and that they will be greatly missed in our field, but that their work will carry on.
Right.
All right. Thanks for highlighting those contributions and important people in our field. So what is next on our evening agenda here?
Yeah, well, I think now it's just general trends in behavior analysis that we all saw in 2019. I know one of the biggest ones that I saw that has been exciting, and I think it's one that's sort of in the overall, at least North American cultural zeitgeist, would be how much topics related to cultural competence in the field have really permeated. I don't think I went to a single talk or read a journal that didn't have at least an article or a speaker who was giving more information about how we as practitioners can practice the ideas of cultural competence, how we don't have to just treat behavior analysis like, well, it's only for this group, or you only have to think about this type of person when you're engaging in behavior change. And while I know for some folks it's a little scary, I mean, it's always scary to have to learn something new. For the most part, I feel it's been very well received as something that our field is behind on, given some of the other human services. Mm-hmm. And everyone seemed very excited to learn about and to improve their abilities with. So thoughts from the group on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was thinking about when we put this item on the agenda is just, kind of reflecting on the just even if you look at like the selection of guests for the podcast and things like that, I know one of the things I'll be looking at moving forward, and also I've thought about this previously as well, is I think. And I've been thinking a lot about this because, like I said, just earlier this week, Greg was asking me a bunch of questions about the podcast and its evolution and things like that. But I think probably fairly correctly, some of the, at least a lot of the earlier episodes might have been kind of almost bro-y in nature, like you said, as a descriptor. And so it's like, how can I be less like that, and how can I have a little bit more, representation and things along those lines on the podcast. And so I think that's something I've been trying to reflect on myself. But yeah, Robert, I would also agree that, we just had New Hampshire ABBA here not too long ago, and there were, out of the 6 talks or so, there were 2 of them, touched on that or directly addressed, that subject. So, yeah, definitely something that we're seeing more and more of.
Yeah.
I think it's so important, too, as we are talking about cultural competence and talking about trying to increase the diversity of behavior analysis as a whole. So not only about, providing treatment, but also inviting everyone to the table, right? So historically, behavior analysis hasn't been as diverse as other fields, maybe because we're new. Who knows the reasons? We could speculate all day about it. But letting other people come to the table to represent their views, I think, is really important. And we're seeing that a lot with WEBA. We're seeing that a lot with a lot of, groups that are coming up to help their issues be known, and that they rightly should be at the table here in the behavior analysis, like dinner, I guess.
It's a good
I'm glad
metaphor.
it's a dinner and not just snacks.
No, it's definitely a dinner.
Yeah, but not just letting people come to the table, but inviting people to
Right.
the table as well. And again, I think that we are all in a unique position to be able to highlight, varied groups within our field and sort of get their messages out to the larger body. And I hope that we can all continue to do that moving into 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking for a new job, but you're overwhelmed with all the emails that you're getting from various ABA agencies? What if there was someone who was in your corner and could help you find the perfect job placement? Well, that person exists. Barbara Voss has been working as a recruiter for over 30 years, and her company, HRIC, specializes in placing BCBAs in permanent full-time positions throughout the United States. Barbara has been placing BCBAs since 2011, so she knows our business, and she offers personalized service to any BCBA looking for a new position. She also helps companies looking to hire BCBAs too. Here are just some of the things Barbara can help you with. She can provide information about salary ranges in different markets across the country. She can help you write your resume. She can coordinate and prepare you for the interview process, and even help negotiate the right salary for you. And best of all, there are no charges to any candidate for all of these services. When you're ready to make a change and want to work with someone who will listen to you and understand what you need in a new position, contact Barbara at HRIC. To schedule a confidential discussion, head over to hricolorado.com. Again, that's hricolorado.com, and hit the contact button to connect with Barbara. You won't be disappointed.
Now, Matt, you mentioned a little earlier as well, but this seems like a good time to talk about it too, the trend of looking at technology and the you wrote it in the notes, and I'm going to try to read it right. Proliferation of
There you go.
You got
it. Only took two in the field. So, what points were you mostly kind of thinking about when reflecting on the year and technology?
Well, I think the best evidence for the emphasis of these sorts of things comes from, if you go to ABAI and go to the expo hall, and it's just booths upon booths upon booths of all these practice management, data collection, and all these technology solutions that are being brought to bear to make behavior analysis more of an efficient, make the implementation of ABA services more efficient. I've had a chance to, see some of that stuff up close. I've got some colleagues who are with Central Region, and I've had some folks from David Stevens and Rick Cabina, who started Chartlytics, which got bought out by Central Reach. I had a chance to spend some time with those folks there, and just seeing all the cool things that and products and services, not only them, but other there's so many different companies out there, and again, it just, if you take a step back, you just marvel at the evolution of our field, of where we've come. I've been practicing behavior analysis since 1999. And I remember the first attempts at trying to digitize ABC data collection in the company I worked for when I started right out of graduate school. It involved scanning these data sheets, and they were going into Excel, and we were trying to make pivot tables and things like that. It was awful, but we were trying. And now with the advent of apps and smartphones and tablets and things like that, it's just tap, swipe, and you've got, you're in business.
Yeah.
I don't, I do school consultation, and so, primarily I don't work in a clinic, and I think working in schools, those types of solutions are going to come more slowly. Mm-hmm. So I'm not I don't use a lot of this technology. I'll do some stuff using the Chartlytics platform. when I want to throw something in a standard acceleration chart. Although I do have some blue charts that I'll actually hand chart some things. Just
Fun.
It is kind of, this is a sad commentary on my reinforcer preference, but sometimes that stuff is kind of fun. And I actually had like this long to-do list the other night, and I saved charting the data for the last thing as like my reward. It was so pre-Mac.
I am so with you.
It was super sad.
Me too.
It was
Jackie has a set of data that she hasn't graphed, and I keep trying to get her to give it to me so that I can graph it because I want to so bad.
Yeah,
it's actually very true. We actually make all of our graduate students in our research design class hand graph all of their data before they do it on Excel.
That's nice. It's fun to. I mean, I haven't made a hand graph.
I know.
If I'm trying to demonstrate to someone like general like trends, like you might see this trend in a graph, is the last time I think I made a graph with my hands.
Yeah. I'm that kind of person.
The only time I hand draw a graph is with dummy data. Like I feel like you're on a whitebboard and like, imagine if it went like this,
This is the variable interval schedules. You should see this trend.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any other specific stories of that, but just seems like, when I was at ABBA this year, it was just like, holy cow, there's just, acres of tech companies. I did an episode, Tech Trends in ABA, and probably about 6 months ago, I think, with 3 or 4 different companies. And it was just, so it's neat that to see what people are trying to do. And it's not just data collection, like some of the folks with like Behavior Me. What's the other one? Oh, he's going to yell at me because I forgot the name of the company. But basically it's like app-based ABA assistance, just super cool, so it's always neat to see these cottage industries developing to meet the needs of the marketplace.
Yeah. I know one of the things that I'm excited to see as there's a little bit more knowledge of what we want to see from the technology, we as practitioners and then the people who are, buying this technology, not exactly like a deceleration in the amount of technology developed, but a sense of these are the products we want so that there's a little bit more uniformity. Because I know one of the challenges I always have with looking at new technologies, I'll talk to 10 different people. They'll have 10 different recommendations for apps that do the exact same thing. And then to think, I'm not going to go through all 10 of these to find the one I like. I'm probably going to pick the first one. And if I like it, that's the one I'll use. And if I hate it, I'll be like, I don't think this technology is ready for me. And I'll go back to doing, my old man, pen and paper or like whatever used to work for me kind of way. Perhaps the new generation of behavior analysts are more flexible with that stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's a me thing, but
it's a YP.
It's a YP. It's not
It's a what?
So it's an MP. It's a my problem.
If Rob is talking, it's an MP. It's a me problem.
I see.
For me, it's a YP. It's a you problem.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. I'm with you.
I didn't get it either.
I think the, just looking at some of the chatter on the Facebook groups about this stuff, it seems like some of these platforms have like a high learning curve to them. And once you get to ninja status, then you can really, really exploit the benefits of them, but I think the companies that make the platforms, very easy to use are the ones that are successful in the long run. One of the people I've featured on the podcast, Go Lotus, is one, and they try to say it's like using an iPhone. The person came from a software design background and had worked for a lot of major tech companies and came at it from a parent angle. The founder of the company has a child with autism, and then started looking at all the data streams coming in, and she was like, "This is a mess." And again, I just love the entrepreneur. Like, I can make something that that solve this problem. I just love that creativity. So. Anyway, you could probably go on and on about that. But another thing I want to bring up is, and I don't really have a lot to add to this because I think we talked about this very briefly last year, but just the role of private equity in behavior analysis. Right. And the only reason I really bring it up is just because it's still very much a thing, right? It's I've had some people on the show to who've gone through the process, and I think there's like with anything, it can be done well and it can be done poorly, but it just makes me wonder where the field will be in like 20 years. There's going to be some like massive centralization, if you will, of and I know I have a lot of colleagues who have their own kind of like, what you would call mom and pop type of clinics or agencies and things like that. And it's like, are they going to be like, subsumed someday by like Harvard Pilgrim or Kaiser or Dartmouth Hitchcock or whatever your major healthcare conglomerate might be. It's like it's just it boggles the mind in terms of where things might go. And I know some pretty large agency owners who are at least entertaining private equity offers, and just out of due diligence, that not wanting to sell, but just wanting to know what in case they had to sell, what they were worth and things like that.
Yeah,
and so it's a real thing. It
is. Yeah, a lot of our colleagues that we know around this area have started with these smaller companies and actually have been bought out by larger companies, and still retain the name. But then it's like of this larger organization. So that seems to be a trend that I've seen too, is that these bigger ABA agencies that may be nationwide are coming and trying to buy out smaller ABA companies too.
And I know in like talking to agencies, when like you, Matt, I do most of my consulting in schools, but sometimes you'll be like trying to reach out to agencies to get a sense of what's available in the area. And you can tell the ones that are just like the mom and pop kind of clinics, and then the ones that, did you recently get bought out because your website hasn't redirected to your new giant slick site where I'm going to be talking to like an operator. I'm not actually going to be talking to anyone who knows what behavior analysis is necessarily. And it's, again, maybe it's it's an MP, but I'm kind of like put off by it. Like, I don't really want to talk to you. I want to talk to the person who's going to make clinical decisions because I have clinical questions that I'm going to ask them about the services you provide. And I don't need someone reading from the brochure because that's all well and good, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not, just, someone who with no knowledge of the field. And I think that's kind of, it kind of makes you nervous, that idea of, are we going to be living all the ethical dilemmas that always come up of, the supervisor who, has like too many cases and they tell their boss and the boss says, I don't care, keep billing. And we sort of all shrugged when we heard that, like, that's never going to happen. We're all ethical behavior analysts. But what if when your boss is no longer a behavior analyst, but somebody who just needs to reach a bottom line and doing things the right way doesn't quite fit in that plan? It can, but
I recently had Beverly and Kirk Kirby on the show, and they talked about they started the group called the Sparks Group in the DC area, and they were recently bought out in the last couple of years, and they basically shopped for their buyer. Basically, they turned down a lot of people, and they talked about the how they wrestled with the decision to sell in the first place. And how they basically were interviewing different people, and they wanted good behavior analysis work to be done, and and didn't sell until they found someone that they were really comfortable with. And I just hope that people who are in that position behave in a similarly ethical manner, and I'm, to be honest, I'm kind of yes, we can understand the competing contingencies that would make for, that scenario that you just described, Rob. But, I don't want to say like, I don't want to have the opinion. I don't want to create some inflexible rule in my head that's like, bad, and I try to keep an open mind about these things. So, but maybe that's just me being naive.
No. I think it's fair to say that it's not a given that an increase in private equity is definitely leading down that road. I think we have enough history of big businesses opening up that people are concerned about that it's really hard not to have it creep into one's mind. But you're right. It's not a foregone conclusion there are ways that, especially there are ways that practitioners who own these companies can try to avoid some of that situation too.
Right. And still have high quality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we'll keep pushing for high quality in all areas. All right, let's move on. All right, who wrote this note? I think, because I'm not sure which one.
I did.
It was you, Rob. Oh, Matt.
I wasn't sure the tone from it was ACT cures everything. Have you tried ACT is the note for our listeners out there? And I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be tongue in cheek. And I was like, did Diana write that? Because somebody was like, let's talk about ACT. And Diana's like, ACT, blah. I don't know. I feel like your ACT preferences are, it's not your favorite.
Well, no, I don't. I just haven't read as much as you have about it. I have nothing against ACT.
Okay. So, but it was you, Matt. So why don't
you want to declare publicly? I'm just kidding. So, one of the reasons, I thought this would be fun to talk about, just because I think if 2019 is not the year of podcasts, it's definitely the year of ACT in the behavior analysis. Because like cultural competence, it's just one of those things that you saw at every venue, every event, and things like that. Or at least that's been my experience. And
people were talking about it. It was on Facebook posts, right? Talking about the boundaries of where can we stretch Act 2, and how should we be stretching it across different disciplines. That's what I've seen. I love that. I love it when people talk about when it's appropriate and when it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that there's been so much training in it, and the proliferation of there's that word again, Rob. Of
you got it the first time though, Matt.
Rolls off the tongue.
of the these curricula, in particular the ones that Mark Dixon and his colleagues have put out, the AIM, and then also the ACT for Children with Autism and Emotional Challenges. So you have these tools that you can put in the hands of practitioners very readily, and kind of be off to the races. But what does that really mean? And again, it gets back to your point, Jackie, of where are the boundary? What are the boundary conditions? Yeah. What's your scope of competence, or with regard to this type of work? What happens when someone reports something that is clearly the domain of someone with more mental health and counseling and psychotherapeutic training than the garden variety BCBA.
Right.
So those are important considerations to have, and that's coming from me. I'm kind of a fan of ACT. I like at the very least, I like the theoretical framework. I think it's been helpful for me to kind of, as a lens, to kind of view various things. Some of the metaphors have been really, personally helpful. Things like diffusion and present moment awareness, and identifying what your values are. So just from my own standpoint, I found that stuff just incredibly helpful, and also it has allowed me to, I think, be more compassionate towards others as well. It's like, so someone's doing something or behaving in a way that that you don't agree with, or is harmful or whatever. You instead of just saying, well, that person's just a jerk, and well, they may be acting like a jerk, but that you could look at it from our basic core principles. Well, that repertoire is in place because it has a history of reinforcement, but at the same time you can say, well, they probably have pretty unclear values. They probably they probably are they're probably not in their present moment. They're probably worried about the future or dwelling on the past, and things like that. So I've just found that to be an incredibly important tool. And at the same time, one of the things I've seen a lot, particularly in the Facebook groups, and maybe it's just a function of spending, maybe my 2020 goal is to spend less time looking at these things, but is that when someone would say, hey, this is going on in my practice, which that alone is a different problem that is beyond the scope of what we're having here, but people looking for advice, or at least looking for support or what have you. Someone would invariably say, have you tried ACT? And so it's for me, it's become like my own meme. It's like, hey, I got a flat tire. Oh, have you tried ACT?
Just
You know,
imagine the
like,
leaf going down the stream and the tire problem will go away. Wait, no.
That's right. No, it won't go away. You just have to accept
That's
it,
what you'll
Rod.
accept
Accept it and
you
move
can
on.
make it happen.
Take
You can make it
action.
happen.
Yeah.
You can't change it in form
Yes.
or frequency. You know, but if you value being on time, you'd commit to changing the tire, you see.
Right.
No, but, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just, like, I don't know. It just seemed like to be the answer for everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've had Mark Dix on the show a couple of times. I even joked around with him, like, what doesn't ACT cure, you know, or, you know, like, what can it do? You know, it's almost like a Seinfeldian type of thing. ACT, what's the deal? You know, and,
Yeah.
but
I think
I love ACT, and I love that it's getting more popular. And I want people to be, firstly, not to throw away their basic behavioral principles when looking at interpreting behavior.
Right.
And then secondly, make sure that they are working within the scope of their training.
Are you a behavior analyst who's interested in using acceptance and commitment training with your clients? Perhaps you work with high-functioning clients on the autism spectrum and you'd like to add an ACT approach to your treatment with this population. If so, then check out the Acceptance and Commitment Training for High-Functioning Autism workshop, which will be held on February 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2020 in Santa Ana, California. This will be led by Dr. Tom Sabo, Courtney Tarbox, and Kenzie Davidson. Attending this workshop will gain 30 Type 2 CEUs, including 3 ethics and 2 supervision credits. This workshop is being put on by my friends at Connections Behavior Planning and Intervention. In this workshop, you'll learn how to use ACT for individuals that max out on the VB map but continue to need help with social skills, romantic relationships, executive function, and other higher order skills. You'll develop fluency with key ACT strategies, including techniques for helping learners self-monitor and collect data on their use of ACT interventions. It will also focus on scope of practice, competence, plus the importance of ongoing training and supervision as they arise in the course of ABA ACT practice. Space is limited, and the price of this event goes up as we get closer to the dates. So you're going to want to get in on the ACT for High-Functioning Autism workshop as soon as possible. And to help defray costs, the folks at Connections are offering listeners a discount, so be sure to use the code PODCAST25 when you sign up. So for more information, go to connections-behavior.com/events or simply check out the show notes for this episode.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Is I think that it's been, from what I have viewed as well on social media, helpful for a lot of behavior analysts to be able to sort of think about their own behavior in that regard and within sort of the framework that ACT provides, as well as how they might be interacting with their clients, etc. And we need that. We need to be able to branch out a little bit into areas that we all talk about and think about in our daily lives, like our values and our thoughts, right? And this will allow us to have more in-depth conversations with regard to that without losing what's conceptually systematic about our field. But I'm with you, Matt, in my concerns about people then moving beyond just using that as an understanding and a framework into using it in their practice and potentially moving beyond their scope of practice without having proper training in ACT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
There are a lot of resources available in terms of where you can find ACT. I know over the summer I spent some time, I read one of Russ Harris's books and was looking online, who are people who practice ACT in the area, just in the kind of general Massachusetts area. So it's
you've got quite a few.
Yeah, it's not like I think there's some areas where you sort of have that sense of, I'd love to get better at this, but there's no one in a 300-mile radius who's going to help me with that. So how am I going to? But this would be
Maybe
one that
online supervision.
You can do online supervision, yes. But this would be one that I think if someone were interested in learning more about ACT or were interested in being more of a mental health practitioner, behavior analyst, there are other people out there. So just keep that in mind, if you're listening to this and say, that sounds great. That there are ways to do that. The response effort is not as high as certain trainings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of the work that Evelyn Gould is doing, at McLean Hospital, is a great example of that. She is the I think her title is clinical behavior analyst or something along those lines, and she is at in a mental health setting as a behavior analyst, not as a psychologist who has behavior analytic training, but is as one of us, if you will. And that's really, really cool. But she has the training to do that with that in a manner that respects boundaries of other practices and keeps clients safe, essentially.
Yeah. All right, and then our last note here, and this one's mine, so I'll start the conversation on this, is that I feel this year was a year in which a lot of sort of the reticence about either talking about or using or including the ISCA in our conversations of how we assess behavior kind of died down a bit. I mean, I think it's still a hot topic. I think there are still some hurt feelings in the field. I think there's still some drama. But for the most part, when there have been discussions of the use of the ISCA as a behavioral assessment, you'll get some folks who are like, well, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I understand, how it fits into the broader scope and the needs of the field and our needs to provide services. So, even at worst, I'm sure there's still folks who really would disagree with sort of that level of acceptance, but that's mostly what I at least personally have seen. And at least in terms of discussing it with either practitioners who are newer in the field or folks who are not behavior analysts, they love it. It makes sense to them so much more than I think the standard analog FA ever made sense to them. And the fact that it can be done quickly, everyone always loves that, especially from a budget standpoint of how much time is this assessment going to take? Parents love hearing that it's probably not going to harm their kid. It's not going to take a long time. It can be done in the settings that the child's already in. So there are a lot of positives there. I understand there's still more to be done with it, but I thought that was kind of the year it sort of became less of that experimental thing that some people were doing. At least was my sense.
We had a pretty split group this year as far as our students go with regard to the ISCA when we attempted to teach it.
Yes, we did.
Very polarized views.
Really?
Really?
Very heated.
They're getting that from
I'd
their
be like, shrug, whatever, teacher. I just got to get through this class.
Yeah, which one's going to get me the A?
Yeah.
But, they're getting that from their supervisors and the places where they work. 'Cause, that would be what's influencing their opinions that strongly, I would think. So my guess is it's still pretty mixed bag out there based on what we've seen.
Yeah. It was surprisingly heated because I'm teaching it and expecting that, just like all other analog FAs or FAs that we talk about, we're going to talk about it, advantages, disadvantages, we're going to move on.
Right.
And
take a quiz,
and then I'm going to go home on time and it's going to be great. Right. But it was like, we have to go home now. It
Students.
is like 9:30 p.m. I appreciate your dialogue, and it was very appropriate. Like, everyone was very nice, but they had my group, I think, had like a 45-minute conversation just going back and forth on advantages, disadvantages.
Such nerds in your class.
I know, but no one was swayed, right? So that was the interesting point too. So they were very, very firm believers, very firm non-believers.
Microcosm.
Yeah, very few people in the middle, surprisingly.
And I feel like when I think we were at the same dinner, we were talking about the ISCA with some other people who've done a lot of research and I would have a lot of reason to be like, no, only this one is the one to use. I felt those responses have been much more either muted or understanding. Mm-hmm. So I'm sad that there would be a new generation who aren't even BCBAs who would care that much.
But think about what you're saying, right? You're saying that big names in the field are saying, hold up, maybe we should look to find the middle ground here, right? Because all we're trying to do is properly assess behavior for its function and then treat it as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. And so you have to think, things take time to trickle down. So it may be that those people are going to be talking more about that. Perhaps we'll see more of that viewpoint, and then that will make its way through the system to our students who may not get a chance to hear that directly, but maybe getting their opinions formed by someone who's heard that first or second hand in a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think a couple things. One would be, I think that would help is, more research carried out by folks independent of Hanley's, kind of family tree.
It's very true. Very true.
And I think that would be, and I know that's what he would want too. Same thing with Mark Dixon says the same thing about Peak.
Yeah.
He says the same thing about Peak. He's like, I want other people to do research on this, so it's just not me, touting my thing, or whatever. Those aren't direct quotes. And
it's a paraphrase.
So I think there's that. And I think also, I know for one thing, I know I have some people who reached out to me who, want to give the rejoinder to the practical functional assessment, and perhaps want to make a case for the standard procedures, or at least some modification of them, But I think that the neat thing about all this is it's really pushing practitioners to move in a more experimentally analytic way of assessing problematic behavior.
Right.
If you go back to one of the, I can't remember which issue it was, but in one of the 2015 issues of JABA, there were not one, but two surveys of practitioners asking them what analytic tools they used in their practice. And I think less than half, and this is for these are two separate papers, less than half of the respondents used any form of analog assessment procedures. So I think the general message of be analytic it is helpful. I think Hanley wrote a paper in Behavior Analysis and Practice, I think in like 2012.
Yep.
I think about
myth paper?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
good paper.
Exactly.
Dispelling the myths of the functional analysis.
Yeah. So I think that one's a good one to look at, because I think, if I'm recalling the paper correctly, it's been a while since I looked at it, but he walks through all the different variations of the traditional functional analysis, like trial-based, brief functional analyses, and a handful of others. So, doing FAs on precursors, So I think a lot of that stuff kind of eventually merged into his current approach, perhaps. But
Iwata and Dozier in 2008 do a really good job too with that review. They like actually outline all of the different designs.
Also a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
What's interesting, and when I was at FDF earlier this week, they were talking about how when they go out, and a lot of their work is international. Like I want to say like 30-40% of their work is is international, and they actually prefer not working with behavior analysts, because we BCBAs bring the baggage to the table, and it actually slows down what they do. They could actually do things quicker and more efficiently, and more, when they're working with someone who's not like trying to have that 45-minute conversation about the particulars or the philosophical underpinnings or whatever, So I thought that was just kind of humorous.
All right. So those are our stamped, old school behavior analytic podcast folk trends of the year. That makes them official now. So I guess the last thing we need to do before we wrap up is talk about what's coming up in 2020. Remember that, guys? Remember?
I'm Barbara Walsh.
There you go. What are we expecting in the coming new year?
What are we hoping for?
I'm
just trying to make it.
Trying to survive to 2021. Yeah,
I know. It's funny. We're recording this on a Sunday night, and it's like, I want to get to Friday, let alone 2020. I can jump in here. One of the things I'd like to see a broader application of behavior analysis and so there's some cool stuff going on, and I mentioned the Kirby's earlier and one of the things I didn't mention when I was talking about them earlier is that they have this new company called Team ABA, and they're using behavior analytic principles to improve athletic performance and health and wellness and all sorts of cool stuff like that. I want to see more stuff like that. For me, maybe there's these future expectations for behavior analysis in 2020, this segment. For me, it's more like wish casting on my part. I'm hopeful we'll see stuff like this. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. That's what I'd like to see. I think there's an increasing community of people who are, outside, in addition to Team ABA, but, you mentioned the Behavior Chef earlier, Clint Evans' podcast. And then some of the stuff that Jim Moore's done he published a paper this year on teaching powerlifting techniques using ABA principles. So like what is not more under the dome than, losing pounds around the midsection. Like that is true. And so I look forward to hopefully to see more stuff in that realm.
Yeah. How about you guys? What are your hopes?
Yeah.
Hopes and dreams.
What are your hopes and dreams?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm hoping that we see an expansion of behavior analytic techniques from, where we are in the field of autism, make that better for the people that love it, right? But then I hope that we are seeping into other places where we'd be needed, right? And
let's use a different verb than seeping. That sounds a little.
Well, I hope that it's not just research being conducted in those different areas, but I hope that people see the value of having a behavior analyst on staff, right? So I love that at McLean, Dr. Gould is there. I'm hoping that, other places that do that sort of work or, other work that's not working directly with children and adults with autism or developmental disabilities see the utility of behavior analysis and then, actively recruit behavior analysts as like a well-paying job, right? So a lot of our students have graduated, and we have a few of them that have gone outside of the field of autism and have struggled to get a job in those different venues, right? So, and it's not always like that well-paying, right? Because you're just the behavior analyst. But I'm hoping people start seeing the value and the utility of looking at a science of behavior across a wide range of different fields. That would be my dream.
If I can piggyback on that for a second, I think with regard to the pay piece is that, and I think this is something that Matt Norman talks about. If you want to go outside of the typical areas of behavior analysis, you almost have to prepare.
Yes.
To be an entrepreneur of some sort. And I don't mean like entrepreneur like, Mark Cuban or who's the British guy, the Virgin Airlines guy. Richard Branson, Richard Branson. I don't mean entrepreneur like that, but you basically need to kind of identify a hole in the marketplace or an area in the marketplace where behavior analysis can provide a solution that people are willing to pay for. So it's not like you can just go to a company and say, hey, I've got all this stuff I can help you with, and so you have to be a little bit more resourceful than that, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I would just hope, though, that companies would look to our research and be like, wow, we need that, right? We need to put a behavior analyst on our staff.
It depends.
Stat.
Yeah.
SAT, stat right now. Oh my goodness, we need it by tomorrow.
It's going to depend. Every business is going to be different in terms of what they think of as research and what's available. And I think there are fields where it's very clear, like, look, see, check out the data.
Right.
We're amazing. And then there's other fields where it's like, we should be amazing. Maybe. We don't know. How would you like to pay me to find out?
Yeah, that would just be my dream.
And here's the scary thing. Not everyone values data.
Right.
Oh, isn't that just the saddest thing? But it is true.
It's so true. So true. I had should I even say this? I had a professor in an education program of a place I won't mention, but when I mentioned there was no empirical support for whatever the thing happened to be, and it's not even that part's the least important part. And she's like, well, that's not the only way of knowing.
You're like, actually, it is.
And I have no poker face at all. Like if I played poker, like I would lose so much money, and so I must have just looked like I was just dumbstruck. So you have to find other ways of connecting with people and showing value. Or at least that's my, I guess, opinion of how to go forward in those types of situations. But that's beyond the scope, I think. But that's a potential rabbit hole that I'll just try to extricate myself from.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you,
I
Diana?
would like to continue to see our field progress in our field social validity of valuing cultural competence, as well as increased value. And I know that this has been hashed out so many times, but our interpersonal and social skills, right? Because I think that good behavior analysis programs can send people out into the world pretty prepared to be behavior analysts by teaching them the principles of behavior analysis, right? And that can be applied to autism and developmental disabilities, but it can be applied in a lot of other ways. But if we're not teaching people how to interact with others and how to put a face on behavior analysis that's going to be understandable and tempting in a way for people to interact with us, then no one's going to be able to use their skills in the way that they really should. And yeah, we've carved out a niche in the autism world, and that's really, really important. But we still have a hard time playing with others, even in that realm.
Right.
And if we really want to use our science well, it's not just our science, it's science, then we have to be able to have some people in our field sort of lead the way in showing how we can interact outside of this one area. And I know that there's some people doing a good job of that, but I think that there's a lot more that's needed, and we need to continue to have that be a focus at the training level for all future behavior analysts. So I would like to see that continue to be a priority.
That would be awesome if it was a task list item, like how to be nice, right? Like how.
A friend of mine and I have actually thought about that as a potential book project, actually, like soft skills for the behavior analyst.
Ooh, that's
a
good.
good idea.
Yeah.
might steal it.
And it's something I've thought quite a bit about because it's something that, it's something that, we like you said, we get prepared, and we're told we can change the world, we could save the world with behavior analysis, and all that stuff, and it doesn't prepare us to interact with folks in a way that, and what we're doing is basically relying on the skill sets that people are already arriving to programs with. There are some people who are, like this colleague of mine is gifted in his ability to connect with people, right? That's an area that I'm, even though I kind of have this weird podcasting hobby where I talk to people and ask them lots of questions and things like that, but interpersonally, I feel I'm fairly introverted, in nature, and so that kind of some of those social graces I struggle with considerably, and so there's this part of me that kind of, and that might be an area where we kind of turn to some literature that is not necessarily grounded in science. Like I read How to Win Friends and Influence People over the summer.
You have so many more friends now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it could have been reduced to a pamphlet. Actually, it was very repetitive. Just to.
It's redundant so that now you know. I mean, that was purposeful.
Yeah. I guess there was the repetition piece there, right? Well, what I think would be a fun project is to maybe go through some of like the best-selling, books in those kind of, personal connection genres. I'm blanking at the proper category
Self-help.
title. Well, self-help is it would be probably a niche, a few niches down from the general self-help category, but that's probably like a good place to start looking, and actually kind of like analyze what the recommendations are from a behavior analytic perspective.
That's a good idea.
That's really smart.
Fun thing to do for the weekends, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to be in 2020 for me, but
there's always time.
We'll see. But it's a fun project, and it's a huge need. So I'm glad you brought it up.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that brings us to the end of our 2019. Sorry, we're talking about the future, and I'm getting all confused. Our 2019 year-end behavior analyst spectacular.
Going really well.
Having some trouble. I want to pronounce words better in 2020, I guess. Well, Matt, it was always fun. Like you said, we do this again next year. It's a trend, but at least for this year, it was a ton of fun chatting with you about all these topics again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I guess for everyone out there listening, you can subscribe to ABA Inside Track and Behavioral Observations everywhere fine podcasts are sold. Anything else you wanted to mention, Matt, or does that sum it up okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing providing some hopefully entertaining and educational content in 2020. I know you guys have no plans for stopping either, and it's just been a great opportunity to chat with my podcasting peers as always. So thanks again for inviting me to do this.
All right, well, let's say goodbye to everyone out there listening. Have a happy new year, and we'll see y'all in 2020. Goodbye.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to the Behavioral Observations Podcast with Matt Sikoria. You can find Matt's notes on this episode at www.behavioralobservations.com. We also invite you to stay connected with us on Facebook at facebook.com/behavioral observations and on Twitter at Behavior Podcast.